I had a couple of specific questions about glare studies and daylighting that I thought I would answer with a short video. The first question was, can we adjust the size of the view sheds, the pizza pies in our glare study? Answer is yes. We have a lot of control over that graphic. So if I go to my annual glare study, I have a bunch of areas that I've already created here. If I want to edit all of them, I can just select them all, come to edit, and I have control over a lot of stuff here. One thing I can change, to answer this question, I just changed the max disk radius to change the size. So we see it does that. I can also change the frequency, so how close they are together. Um, the more of these we have, the more number crunching it is, and the more time it's going to take. But we do have that control. So the spacing of the sensors from away from each other, the size of the graphic that we're looking at, occupancy times, the inset from the closest wall or surface, the view plane offset. So I can set this to 2.5 feet. Actually, let's do that. I'm going to close out and do that. So let's just look at what we've done so far. I think I had this at, oh, that's right. Okay, I am going to put this at 2.5 feet, and then we'll change it. Okay, so now we've seen what we can adjust. But let's say why is this at 2.5 feet? That's first of all the default because that's desk height, basically 30 inches. But let's say first of all, we wouldn't always by any means do a patio as part of a glare study. We might want to know glare outside, but typically it's an indoor metric that we're using, and it's in combination with the lead daylighting study, which is inside. But let's say I wanted to do it on the patio, but I wanted to have a different work surface height because I was thinking, well, actually, I'm just sitting outside, and it's going to be hitting the patio itself, not a table, and that's where the light's coming off of. I could then edit that and put this at, I'll put it at 1/2 foot. And so I've customized this. So that's that's the answer to that question with a little more detail. The other question had to do with daylight factor. So let's look at daylight factor. I've got a few of these run. Actually, I'm just gonna right now. I'm gonna remember that if we want to not. Oh, actually, no, I won't do that. I'm going to change from daylight factor to daylight availability study. These same surfaces now are being used as work surfaces for the daylight study. The little black dots are sensors. But let's look at a couple of examples that I ran already. So I ran one, and this is, anyway, I ran one without any overhangs. And yeah, I already, so the question was, this person had a daylight factor of over 2.5% already, and I think in the slides we said you're shooting for above 2.5%, and that 5% and more is well lit, and so if you get much above 5, maybe you're concerned. That's way too general and really not that helpful. Just as a reminder, this metric came from a time when we didn't really have easy access to simulations, so it was more hand calculations. So typically we're going to use something like the daylight factor. I'm sorry, the daylight availability study for lead, which is also in this assignment. But I wanted you just to know how this works because you might come across it. But anyway, so here's the question is, I've got, as the person who asked the question, I've got really high daylight factors out here. If I'm trying to get to 5%, how would I do that? Well, one way I did it was by putting in these partition walls. And so what I did is I created I don't seem to have that here as the original, but or maybe I did. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I'm trying to remember if it seems to me like that these walls are already in play in this simulation. It doesn't matter. I'm saying one thing you can do is put in physical barriers and separate the space into different spaces that maybe you want a space like this is now a sunroom here, pretty bright, and then we can create a more subdued light back here. So we're in the range we'd want to have in the back of the room already, or in the middle of the back. Or in the middle to the north. So what would be an approach here? Well, one thing I did is I added a 2 foot overhang, and we can see. And let me just turn that on. That's the 2 foot overhang, I believe. Um, it does something. We went. Let's see. That's 15.9 there, and now it's 19.9. So that's 25%. Pretty big drop, but it's still a lot of light. So if we wanted to go further, what would we do? What would be the options? Well, of course, we could make this. We could easily make this overhang longer and try that. Or we can come in. And we could come in and change the materials or the glazing packages that we choose. So let's look at that. If I come to these are the four. What I've done is I've separated this building into a southwest. Let me get rid of that overhang and just turn them off so it's easier to see. I've got south, west, north, and east. There's actually no windows in the east because I have a mechanical room and a bathroom back here. I have a high north window in the bathroom. So I've got my fenestration, my windows and doors that have glass in them broken up into south, west, north, and east over here. Right? And so I have chosen specific materials for the windows. Let's look at what they were initially. Here I've got, let's just go to the 2 foot. I go to this information tab, and I see that on these window layers, I have glazing all the same, and it has a visible transmittance of about 88%. That's a lot. This is clear glass. So one way to bring this down quickly and without changing my form is to change my glazing. And I'll just do it on all four sides. Well, actually, I don't need to. I'll do it on the south. Well, maybe it'll just be easier to do it on all four sides as a demonstration. I'm selecting those four. I'm clicking into the material. And we went over this in class, but ask me if you still have questions. Remember, we talked about we're going to go into more detail on solar heat gain coefficient U value later when we're talking about energy use, thermal analysis. But right now we're talking about just the visible transmittance. So we're trying daylighting is the amount of visible light coming through the glazing and hitting a surface that we're studying, or a series of surfaces. So if we just find some glazing that has a lower than 87% visible transmittance, that's going to do a lot. So let's go to something pretty low. I'll go to 37%. Now, the lower you get, you're going to have to see the glass itself if you're really building a building, because it might be darker than you want. But for our purposes, if I select this, so now I have everything's going to have a 38% visible transmittance. I'm going to go ahead and turn on, just so we're consistent with, I'm going to turn on my overhangs again, makes a small amount of difference, and then run this. So you can see a massive difference here, right? So just by changing the glazing package, we call it the assembly of glazing that we're this making up these windows. I go from 15.9 daylight factor to I'm saying just right in this one place like 7. So I've cut it more than in half. And back in this part of the room, I'm within my desired daylight factor. Back here, I've got way too little now. So it's a dynamic. The one other thing I want to point out, though, is just remind us about this color range thing here. I've got it set at 0 to 10 right now. I'm not sure why I would do that. If I was trying to get to 5, maybe I should change it to 0 to 5. And we see that makes a big difference. And so psychologically, this is the exact same data, but psychologically it's very different to have red, right? So just remember that you need to consciously set a range that makes sense for the full range of simulations you're going to show for a specific workflow, like daylight factor. In other words, if I were to change this between two different daylight factor simulations, it would be confusing to the viewer and dishonest, actually. Another thing I can do, though, is I can come into this. I can edit the range. There's a bunch of different color options we can choose, so that's up to you. It's an aesthetic choice. I have ones that I like myself, But then you can also set this to where I'd say if I'm above range, I want it to be a color. I'm just going to make it above is going to be white and below is going to be black. And then if I change my range to starting at the bottom of what I was hoping to get to the top, so in other words, I don't want anything below 2.5, and things above 5 are maybe too much, I get a very different graphic. Now, I personally don't particularly like this one, but who cares? I mean, it's not up to me. It's just an aesthetic choice, or really a choice of what's the most communicative. All right. So that answers those questions. Keep them coming, and I'll keep making videos. See you in class.